Okay, so now b3 by white, preparing for bishop to b2 or maybe bishop to a3, or maybe white can also go for c4 in future, which attacks this pawn chain. Okay, so after that, here Gukesh goes for. And after that, knight to e5, asking for knight exchange, which black obviously can't do because that will make this pawn chain connected. So that's why. And now for white, it's just better to go for queen to f4, trying to exchange the queen because uh, after queen takes f4, knight takes f4, rook takes c3, rook takes c3, rook takes c3, rook takes e6. And suddenly you can see by this exchange, white pieces becomes very active as compared to black. Supported by these two powerful knights, white is also threatening to capture the pawn on d5, and by this you can see white is better. But in the actual game, after bishop to e8, here white goes for. Here white pushed g3, which is a slight inaccuracy because yes, this pawn chain is solid, but by pushing this pawn to g3, white somehow weakens the h3 square. Okay, so now here the best move for white is to just push this pawn to g4, trying to attack this active knight, but instead here Nogerbek goes for. Okay, so after that, here Gukesh goes for b5, preparing to push b4, and to stop this, here white brings his knight to d3, covering this b4 square so that this pawn can't be pushed. Okay, so now for white, there are multiple ways to continue this game, like knight to f4 or maybe knight to e1, so that white can push f4. But instead, here white made an inaccuracy by bringing this knight to c5. And the problem with that move is, there is no more defender left for this e5 square, so now Gukesh instantly finds the move e5. And this creates multiple threats, and obviously white cannot capture this pawn due to the threat of rook takes c5, and later black can also go for knight to f5, which attacks this queen. So that's why after seeing this from other side, here white goes for b4, trying to open up this position, but Gukesh just goes according to his plan. He immediately goes for. And now for white, it's better to just go for knight to f1 with the idea of knight to e3, trying to exchange this active knight. But instead, here white made a mistake by pushing f4, weakening the pawn structure, which are the main key defenders of the king. And as you can see, now black is threatening knight to e3 check. So that's why to stop this, here white brings his knight back to f1. And now Gukesh just captured this free pawn. And since black is now threatening to capture this knight on c5, so that's why here white goes for queen to f2. And that's important. I mean, let's suppose after queen takes b4, if white goes for any another move like knight to e3, trying to attack this knight, but as I said, now black can actually sacrifice his rook by rook takes c5. This is because after takes, queen takes c5, knight takes c4, b takes c4, and now you can see black has these three passed pawn which cannot be stopped by white, and by this you can see this is completely winning for black. But in the actual game, after queen to f2, here Gukesh goes for rook to a8, preparing for rook to a3 so that he can go for rook to f3, which targets this queen. And the best way to tackle this is simply rook to e2, with the idea of rook to e3 if black goes for rook to a3, which also stops this e pawn from pushing further. But instead, here Nogerbek goes for rook to c3, which stops the move rook to a3. But now to win this game, here black just have to find this move e3. But what if knight takes e3? I mean, it's obvious. But if this happens, then black can go for this amazing move, rook takes c5. This is because after d takes c5, t4, attacking this rook and this knight. And if white tries to defend this his rook, which look obvious, but now comes knight takes e3 check, king to h3, knight takes c2, rook takes c2, and finally d3. And as you can see in the next move, black will capture this d2 pawn, and yeah, game over. But Gukesh instead missed Gukesh missed that move, and after rook to c3 he goes for Okay, so now in this position, here knight to c5 is recommended for white so that he can attack this rook, but instead here white goes for Okay, so now queen to d2, asking for queen exchange, but Gukesh finds the best move, bishop to c4, threatening to push e3, so that's why here Nogerbek brings his queen back to d1. And in this position, the final move by Gukesh is queen takes b2, and here Nogerbek resigned. This is because after queen takes b2, now comes rook takes a2, pinning this, and obviously now white is forced to capture this, and after that rook takes a2 check, and you can see here black is a rook up, and this is all over for white. What an amazing game by Gukesh. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.